What's up, YouTube? Hi, and welcome to this week's rendition of Gods Unchained Market Watch. I'm your host, Juju, and today we're going to be going over all of the notable market movements that have been going on in Gods Unchained. So, let's talk about Sleep 2.0. So, over the past week, Sleep 2.0 was announced. The game developers later realized that it wasn't healthy for the game. Not because it allowed counterplay for Sleep, but because it heavily nerfed a lot of the cards in the Deception class. I think that was just a great decision. The problem cards in Sleep are going to be Siren of the Grave, and it's not really Demogorgon, to be honest, because Demogorgon's a 7-mana card. You're waiting 9 turns to play it, and it's not even a crazy big body, right? It's a 4/6, and a 4/6 on turn 7 is really easy to deal with, despite the mass sleep. Despite the leech, that's just it. That's just how it is with Demogorgon. But Siren of the Grave is pretty busted. I mean, not like over busted, but it's a high power level card, right? First of all, it's 1 mana. You can play this on turn 1, regardless of anything, right? Combos well with Siren of the Grave, or Siren of the Grave? No, not Siren of the Grave. Sulfuric Rain. So that's a 2-mana combo. That's essentially an aggro board wipe that lets you refill your hand. It's pretty powerful. Not only that, but it also enables cards like Half-Life and Canopic Hoarder and Pallbearer, which is out of left field in the meta right now, but it can happen. It allows for those cards to proc those afterlife effects to cause more sleep effects, right? So with that being said, I just think, it's a good thing that the developers realized their mistake, were very transparent about it. They were also very transparent about their findings. They communicated on Reddit and their blog and their Discord. And then they essentially were like, okay, we're going to go back to the drawing board and hopefully find a solution to this to make the game better for us, right? And that's all we can really ask is for players. When we have developers that care for the game and don't just print busted cards and, leave it with us and are just like, okay, deal with it. You know what I mean? That's so healthy for us, And that's why I'm bullish on Gods Unchained, because we have developers that actually care about the game and want the game to succeed and have, they're willing to try and make mistakes and then admit their mistakes and come back. So that's all I'm going to say about that. A couple other things too. We have a new weekend ranked reward system. That's great. I'm enjoying the more packs, which is nice. In Mythic rank, of course, but I mean, all the other ranks have more stuff as well. So it's been cool to see, honestly. And yeah, that's pretty much it on my weekend. If you want to know how my weekend has been going, or the channel has been going, apologies for not posting on YouTube as much. I mean, I shouldn't really apologize, right? I have my reasons. One, work has been really crazy. We've been doing a lot of projects, and it's been an eventful week. And then 2, I've been using all my spare time to prepare for the Gods Unchained tournaments that I'm in right now. I'm currently in the Cujo Lovable, and I'm on the 3rd round right now. I beat 2 opponents, which is nice, and I think I'm in the top 32 or something like that. And then I'm also in the Infinite Mana tourney. I just had my first match on Saturday. Won that one 3-0, and now we're waiting for the next round. So yeah, I really want to do well with these, and I've been recording my vids, which is nice. So we'll have some good VOD content to review some tournament play. And I'm excited to do that and offer some more educational content when it comes to gameplay and all that stuff. But that's what's been going on my end. So, but expect to see more videos soon. I do have a lot of concepts coming down the pipeline. We still got to do the core set review. I want to finish my tier list series, and I want to go over every card individually. I think that would be really nice. But yeah, so before we begin, I just want to say thank y'all for supporting the channel. It means so much, for reals. We've had the amount of positive feedback we've been getting has been amazing. Yeah, and I started posting on this channel seriously maybe a month ago. Really, I had a couple videos about Gods Unchained, like, before 2021 ended, but I really decided to get serious with it like this past month, and I really appreciate y'all for tuning in. That's all I have to say. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with our market watch. First up, we have Sulfuric Rain. It dipped a little bit when Ethereum dipped. Of course, now that Ethereum's back up, it's trending upward, really. 258. Cheapest you can find is 278. This card is really good. Each creature gets burn +2, and afterlife draw a card. It also dipped during the Sleep 2.0 because of the Siren of the Grave nerf, but honestly, yeah, this card is a removal / a cycle engine all in one. Combos well with Siren of the Grave to be a 2-mana combo. It's a really good card. Sorry, I've been burping. It's a thing. But yeah, great card. Have nothing to say here. We do see an uptick in pricing, and it's probably going to go up. Okay, so next up we have the Harvester. This card has seen play in some board wipe death decks lately. It's a 6-mana 3/4, which makes it a little too expensive for its stat line, but it's really easy to proc, right? Because whenever a creature dies, you deal 2 damage to both gods. When your god takes damage, you heal your god for 2, and when your god is healed, this creature gains 1 strength. So this might as well say, whenever a creature dies, this card gains 1 strength, and your opponent's god loses 2 health, right? That's pretty good, in my opinion. Yeah, and it's really easy for this to get really big if it's not dealt with. It allows for heal. I think it's honestly it's a good card, and it makes sense in board wipe death. I think there are better options, but I also see the value in playing a card like this, especially in this meta right now. Neferus Kopesh, 4-mana 0/3. We did see a buyout here, and it's spiking to 58. Cheapest you can find it at is 53 though, so that's kind of nice. This card is really good in board wipe death. You get to summon a Hypocria for free if you can get it in the grave. You also get to summon an Ares Peacemaker for free if you get it in the grave, and yeah, it's pretty busted. It doesn't have to be 0-mana minions that you summon too. You can summon a Burrowing Scarab, you can summon a Fanatic of Kanoom, Siren of the Grave, sometimes Vrock. Yeah, it's just free tempo every turn, and it's very hard to get rid of because after you play a death card, this gains 1 durability, right? And if you're playing a death deck, you're probably playing death cards. So yeah, great card overall. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a spike in this, another spike. Okay, so we see a spike in Pyrrhic Incantation. This is a 1-mana deception card, death card. Give target creature burn +14. Deal 3 damage to your god. You deal 3 damage to your god, but dealing burn 14 means almost guarantees a kill the next turn. Granted that, it's going to stay alive. It can attack you, but your target will be, dead by the end of your opponent's next turn, which is nice. Barring they have any anti-burn cards. Synergizes well with sleep. Jumped all the way from $2 to $3, which is pretty interesting. But it is from the Genesis set, so I kind of understand. We could see this is a very efficient removal if you really think about it. Cool. Up next we have the Deception cards. So before we begin, I'm going to check my audio, making sure that you can hear us. Cool. Awesome. One of my worst fears is the audio going out during one of these filming sessions. So Mimikyu is a 1-mana 1/1. It's spiking again, which is pretty interesting. Honestly, it's a great card. It's free information. It turns into a creature your opponent has, so you get to play around that creature accordingly. Like if your opponent has a Demogorgon and this Mimikyu turns into a Demogorgon, you have a Demogorgon. But you do have to play it on that turn, so you have to be careful. But it's great to understand what's in your opponent's hand, right? So you can plan accordingly. It's a pretty good card in my opinion. Definitely understand why it's been going up in value. Cool. Next up we have Three's a Crowd. This is an interesting one. We do see an increase in activity and price. It goes from 14 to 21. Pull 2 random enemy creatures from the board into their controller's hand. Summon a 3/2 golem. So this can be a tempo swing in itself, especially if your opponent only has 2 minions on board. And it's great because if your opponent has 2 minions on board, you play this card, you get to summon this golem. I mean, it also plays around ward and all, protected and all that stuff, so I guess that's interesting. I mean, it's a viable removal option, especially in control decks. Next up, we have Labyrinth Minotaur, 6 mana, 4/7, roar, pick 1, attack target enemy creature, or gain hidden for 1 turn. This card is pretty decent in my opinion. 6 mana, 4/7 is nothing to laugh at. I love the 7 health on the 6 mana card. The 4 leaves more to be wanting, but 4 is still a decent stat line. And the fact that it can attack right away if you pick the attack target enemy creature, which is nice. It gains hidden for 1 turn, so there can be like some hidden shenanigans right there. But yeah, we do see a price spike all the way from 12 to 19. Hypno's Puzzle Box. Okay, so I've given this one a lot of thought since last week, because we covered this card last week as well. This is a 1 mana target creature goes to sleep. Add 2 random runes, anims, or enchanted weapons to each god's hand. This seems more of a control card, especially in like a control deception deck that wants to get to fatigue and is trying to mill cards from your deck. I could see this card being played in a situation where your opponent has 7 hit cards in hand. You play Hypno's Puzzle Box, make a minion of theirs sleep, and then fill their cards up with just a random rune or anim, and then from there force them to overdraw and mill one of their cards. That can be an implication. I mean, it's also good against aggro, right? Because you're stopping a creature from attacking next turn. You're filling your hand with tools to hopefully deal with future minions. So it's an interesting card for sure, but it's definitely a card for control deception decks, in my opinion. Cool. Next up, we have the light cards. This is Griffith the Chosen. Oops. Protected ward. Roar, set the strength of all other creatures with strength 4 or more to 1. Protected and ward is a great combination to have. It makes it really hard to deal with. For 7 mana, 6/7 is very good, and the fact that it turns all creatures that have a strength of 4 or more to 1 is pretty decent. Neutralizes threats, is a threat itself, has a big booty. Yeah, makes sense. Buyout went from, or activity price has gone from 112 to about 173, back down to 160. Cheapest you can buy it at is 142. It is pretty expensive though, in terms of, well, I mean, I guess in card value too, but in terms of mana. So you are waiting about, what, 9 turns? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yeah, you're waiting 9 turns to play this on 7 mana. So you do have to, I guess, be careful about that. And when you do put that into perspective, 9 turns, for 9 turns, 6/7 isn't worth. 6/7 protected ward might be though. So Seraph is an interesting one. This is a 5 mana 1/1 frontline protected. Afterlife, set the attack of all enemy creatures to 1. We do see a little bit of a spike here, jump from 77 all the way to 106. Wow, back to 90. Yeah, it's back to 90. Frontline protected. I just don't like the fact that it's 1 health. Right? But I mean, I guess it can neutralize a ton of creatures if played right. But it's so fragile. Even with the frontline and protected, like, you're probably going to kill it. Right? So, I could see it being good. I mean, it could be decent, but I feel like there are just better cards to play at the 5 slot for light cards in particular. But maybe I'm wrong. This card might be good. Alexis, Archon Sword, Roar, summon 5 2/2 acolytes and give them frontline. So this is basically a 15/17 with frontline 5 times for 8 mana. I think it's a decent like finisher. Could be a finisher, could be a stall card really, but I mean 8 mana is very expensive. You're waiting 15 12 turns. You're waiting 12 turns to play this card. So, I mean, is it worth the 12 turns to wait? Possibly, especially if you have like more acolyte support. Maybe you have like that sword that gives minions with 2/2 a buff, like the 1/1, the 4 mana card. I forget what it is, but it's in the light class. It's in the core set, I believe. Core or welcome set, one of those. Anyways, I think the card is okay. We do see a buyout here. 12 copies were bought at an average price of $78.98. But that's a 30% or $30 like increase in price. Very interesting. Now it's at $85. Cool. Next up we have Golden Harp. This is a 3-mana 0/3. At the end of your turn, summon a 1/1 injured soldier with frontline. At the start of your opponent's turn, this heals all friendly characters for 1 and loses 1 durability. I think this card synergizes really well with High Thaumaturge, the 2-mana 1/2 that lets you draw a card every time a minion is healed. It also combos well with CERN. And I like the fact that the effect comes at the end of your turn, so it's guaranteed to proc, and at the start of your opponent's turn, so it's guaranteed to proc. This card could be very interesting. I could definitely see it in a Zoo Light deck that uses High Thaumaturge and CERN, so that'll be interesting for sure. Buyout happened at 31 copies at an average price of $51. Now the most cheapest you can buy it at is $79.16. Next up we have Phalanx Champion. This is a 4-mana frontline. Gain 1 health for every 2 Olympians in your void. I could see this, for this to be worth, you need to have 4 Olympians in your void. I could see this being worth it as a 3/6, but anything else, But it is possible to achieve because of Zoo Light, so we'll see if this card sees more play. But yeah, it went from $6 to $8, and now it's, wow, look at that. It's all the way at $15.55. That's a big jump. Next up we have Lysander's Mercy. This is your 7-mana spell. Pull each creature on the board onto the bottom of their controller's deck. Very interesting indeed. We do see it hovering around that 682 mark. I think the card is a good board wipe because it plays around ward and protected. Could be something there. I just don't like how it's very expensive removal. It's 7 mana, and you're going to have to deal with those threats later on, especially if you go to late game. If you're playing a control build with this card, you need to make sure you're able to deal with the threats that you sent back into the deck. Cool. So moving on to the Magic cards. Overall, Magic has been spiking over the past couple days. I think it's just because ETH going up, as well as Tempo Mage being one of the most prominent decks, popular decks in the meta game right now. Plus the cards are good, so no surprise here. But Palace's Wand is up first. This is a 2-mana 0/2 relic. After you play a Magic card, give 1 durability to this relic. Ability, draw a card, and give -3 durability to this relic. So jumped all the way from 119 to like 200. Now it's hovering over that 171 range. This is a very powerful card. It's basically a 1-card draw engine, and that's really good. It doesn't cost any mana after you pay the initial mana costs. So the return on investment can be very good, especially if you play around cards like Iron Tooth Goblin and any of the other relic removal cards. This getting counterfeited though does feel bad, so if you're playing Deception, watch out for that. But yeah, nothing much to say here. This card is broken. Lost in the Depths. This card has went up by a crazy amount. Earlier in the year it was $33. Now it's at $129. Oh my goodness. Now the cheapest you can buy it is $120. It's a 1-mana draw a creature, targeted creature, obliterate, or draw a card, targeted creature, obliterate cards in your hand with the same costs as that creature. Very good card in my opinion. Can thin your deck at pretty much the click of a button. Yeah, and it's a draw card. It's 1 mana too, so there's a lot of synergies going on with Oni's Spellsword, Runic Familiar, Monolith of Storms, Vortimer the Volatile, heck, even Palace's Wand, right? So Yeah, I could understand this move. Yeah, now it's at like 120, which is crazy to me. Wow. Cool. Next up, we have Clone. This is your 2 mana copy of the lowest creature in your hand. This is probably a card that's used in Portal Wrangler decks. Definitely a card that's used in Portal Wrangler decks. Has some OTK potential if we can find an OTK. There has to be an OTK, right? Like, I know there's an OTK somewhere, so we'll find out where that is. But anyways, the spike went from $72 all the way to 121. Now it's at 123. Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, Magic is going off right now. Palace, Champion of Magic, 3 mana, 1/4, ward, ability, delve a spell or obliterate a random card in the enemy god's void and deal damage to them equal to its cost. So this card is pretty good. Backline and ward, or no, sorry, just ward. Ward gives it the ability to fend off like any removal, which is nice, at least once. And yeah, it can generate like an insane amount of value and damage if left unchecked. So it makes sense. It's a little slow in the sense that you have to wait a turn before you can actually use it because of its ability. But I mean, the ward helps its survivability. So, but yeah. Anyways, we do see a increase in price from $73, peaked all the way at 112, and now it's settling at 105. Right now, the cheapest you can find it at is 101.48. Come on. Cool. Form of Power. Deal 2 damage to an enemy creature and 1 damage to your opponent's god. Another 1 mana magic spell. Very good card. Scales with spell power. With spell power 1, it deals 3 and 2. And then with spell power 2, it deals 4 and 3. So 7 damage is for 1 mana is great, honestly. So makes sense. Yeah, it's a pretty good card in my opinion. Read the Leaves is seeing a buyout right now, or a couple of buyouts really, but it's an increase in activity for sure. $15 all the way to 21. This card is great for combo decks or decks that are trying to draw into an OTK. You get to force C2 and then you get to draw a card, right? So you essentially get to dig through 3 cards max if you want to, which is nice. It's also a Genesis set Epic, which has a lot of potential. But anyways, this card, yeah, nothing much to say here. It's a decent card and it has room to go up. Beam. Deal 3 damage to target creature and 3 damage to your opponent. This card also scales well with spell power. 4 mana is a little expensive for me, but I guess like some decks like to run it. Some Tempo Magic decks do run it, but we do see a buyout here happen February 2nd, and it started at $13.77. Now it's at $19.28. Current price right now is $18.40. So it's a very interesting card. Portal Wrangler. All right, this card has some shenanigans. So it's a 4 mana 3/4 mystic. Add a copy of the last creature played to your hand. So the premise of the deck is to discount it using cards like Warp Engineer and other options. Basically, Assistant Alchemist. Discount it as much as possible so that you can play this card with 0 at a cost of 0, but before you play the card, you want to clone it, right? Which is why we saw the spike in clone, because I feel like this deck is coming back. But yeah, eventually, if you do it right, you end up with a field full of 3/4s. You get 6 3/4s, and then you get a couple. It's basically an endless amount of 3/4s, because even if they clear it, you get to play it again next turn. So I think that's pretty interesting, especially if you get the combo off. But yeah, right now it's currently at 833 or 825. Before last week, it was at like 635, which is interesting. Okay. While this is loading, I'm taking a sip of water. Dimension Looper has seen increased activity. It's 4 mana, 3/4 Mystic, deal 1 damage. If you're holding an Aether, deal 3 damage instead. I guess Aether decks are coming into the fold again, which is interesting to say the least. 4 mana, 3/4 that deals 3 damage is pretty decent. I mean, it's better than that 5 mana, 3/3 Archer that does the same thing. So, I mean, and this can go face, right? This 3 damage can go face. So I can see why, it's a people are buying into this card. It's $2.47 January 31st, and then it popped up all the way to $10. Now it's at $7.33. That's so interesting. Okay, Arcane Burst is your 7 mana. Deal 1 damage to a character for each spell that costs 3 or less in your void, up to a maximum of 10 damage. 7 mana for 10 damage is a lot. 10 damage is a lot, though. It's basically a Pyroblast, if I think of it in Hearthstone terms. So, if I'm running a deck that plays a lot of spells that are 3 or less, which Magic has a lot of, and I played this card, it turns into a Pyroblast. So I'm basically waiting 9 turns because it's 7 mana to do 10 damage. Yeah, I can get behind it. But yeah, 178 all the way to 519. Current price is 431. That's very interesting. Levitate is another 1 mana spell. Synergizes well with Oni Spellsword, Monolith of Storms, Fortimer the Volatile, Palace's Wand, and it removes a frontline or backline target, right? So that's really great. You can, whatever the hollow is, right? You can remove backline from that. If something's in your way that has frontline, you can remove frontline from that and just go face. Very, very nice card, and you get to draw a card, which is always good. Cool. So now we have Antimian's Reflection. Roar, this creature gains Blitz if any enemy creature has Blitz. Repeat for God Blitz, Deadly Flank, Twin Strike, Regen, Ward, and Protected. Honestly, it's really easy to get these bonuses against any class, right? So against Nature, you'd proc Regen a lot. Against Magic, you can definitely proc Ward and Protected, if they have the Shadow Scryer. Against War, it's usually Protected or Blitz, which is nice. Against Light, it's usually Ward or Protected. And against Death, I guess Death, not really. But I mean, yeah, that's interesting. Oh, Death doesn't really have anything to go with this card. But all the other classes do. So, I like the card, honestly. It's a 5 mana 5/5, which is decent stats, and depending on what your opponent has, it's a great threat to have. But we do see a buyout happen here. Went from 190 to 330, and it's settling at the 281 range. Mana Auditor. So this is a 6 mana 4/4, which is already weak in stats. But if you're holding an Aether, you remove 2 mana locks, which is pretty good. You'd want to ramp up as fast as possible, right? So gaining 2 mana locks versus gaining 1 from a sip of elixir is good. However, the only problem I have with it is that it's 6 mana, and as a ramp deck, by the time you get to 6 mana, you probably want to play really big cards, right? You want that Labyrinth Minotaur, or I don't know, that Archimedes Mirror. You don't want this Mana Auditor unless you want to set up for unless you really want to ramp further. But understanding ramp decks, you're usually playing ramp the first couple of turns anyways, so you're already behind on board. So yeah, it's interesting. That's part of the reason why Crystal Axe doesn't get played, and Crystal Axe is cheaper. It's 5 mana. But I digress. Maybe this card is a sleeper. I don't know. I don't want to claim like I know everything, but yeah, this card could be a sleeper. I don't know. But my gut tells me it's not, if that makes sense. Shaped Blast, 5 mana, pick 1, deal 5 damage to each creature with frontline, or deal 3 damage to each creature without frontline. We do see a spike here. I like the card, especially if your opponent doesn't have any minions with frontline. Great anti-aggro card. Even when your opponent has a front line, I think that 5 damage threshold is really important because it goes through stuff like Great Hall. It goes through stuff like that 4/5 in Magic that gives spell boost but can't attack. I think it's called Wall of Lightning. But there's so many implications to use for this. Yeah. The only thing that I will say is it kind of sucks when your opponent does have frontline, but other creatures that don't have frontline, because then you're forced to choose. But sometimes it won't really matter. Sometimes you just need to play the card to save yourself some face. Okay, last for the Magic, we have Heka's Enchantress. This is a Roar for C2, 1/2 a Nubian. Yeah, so this card has been seeing an increase in play as well. Went from $1 to $2.40. I really don't get it though, because it's a 1/2 and it's just so weak. I get it. You can foresee 2 and hopefully set yourself up for future draws, but I mean, maybe you can play this in a ramp deck, but honestly, if I'm playing a ramp deck, I would want to play like something like a Shadow Scryer. Shadow Scryer does like such a better job than this, but I guess if you want more consistency on turn 1 and you want more foresee effects, you can possibly play this card. Next up, for Nature, we have Chirin the Teacher. Chirin is regen 1, which is kind of useless because it has 1 health. Randomly give 1/1 to another of your creatures. Give -1 durability to your opponent's relic. So it's a Wiccan Trapper plus a Shield Bearer put together. Just with worse stats. The regen 1 doesn't really matter because it has 1 health anyways. When are you going to use regen on this Chirin? Never, unless you hit, unless you buff it somehow, right? But to be fair, I think this card is a tad bit overpriced. And, okay, this might be a hot take, but I think it might be a little overrated. Because, I mean, yeah, it's a 1/1, give a random, creature 1/1. But, yeah, I don't know. It isn't a threat to me. Like, if I see this card being played against me, I'm like, all right, cool. It's not that very like busted. So I don't know why it's 215. Well, I do know why it's 215. It's because it's a legendary. But yeah, do I think it's a staple in Big Beast Nature or just Nature in general? No. Would I include this in my deck if I didn't have a better any option? Yes, I would probably put this in my deck. However, it's not very needed. I will say that. Next up, we have Photogenesis. This is your 7 mana spell. Add 4 random nature cards to your hand. Refresh 6 mana. I like this card. It's a late game card that you can use to refill your hand, which is nice, especially if you're playing a control deck or maybe a mid-range deck. Turn 9, if you have nothing in your hand, or even if you just want to refill and you have the time to, play this card. And that's get cards and then play them, yeah? Because honestly, what this should read is pay 1 mana, add 4 random nature cards to your hand, and play whatever you can. It's a very good card, and yeah, we're seeing an increase in price from 65 all the way to 136. Jesus. Selena's Bow is also a champion weapon, and you know how I feel about those. After you play a nature card, give 1+ durability to this relic. Deal 2 damage to a random enemy creature and give -2 durability to this relic. Honestly, it's really good. It's free removal every turn, even though it's random, which is nice. Or it's the random part isn't nice, but it's free removal, which is nice. And it can get really hard to use relic removal on this card, right? Like all the other champion cards, like it's very hard to kill unless you have something like a counterfeit, or you use multiple relic removal options, which is kind of nutty if you ask me. Next up, we have Jaguar Staff. This is your 5 mana 2/2 with Blitz. After your god attacks, summon a black Jaguar. So yeah, this is what, 4 stats of damage plus 2 3/3s for 5 mana. Yeah, that's worth my mana for sure. We do see a spike happen from 15 all the way to $25. It's currently at 26. It's a good card. Very good card. Big Beast Nature is also a very good deck. Next up, we have Watchtower of Agridor. 6 mana, 2/8, backline, ability, pick 1, summon an Agridor Protector, a Tainted Treant, or 3 Vibrant Fruits. Yeah, this card is pretty good if you can get it off. So 6 mana means you're waiting 7 turns, but 7 turns isn't really... It's doable. The fact that it has 8th health means that it can there's a very high chance that it can survive before it can use its ability, which is good. The 2 strength you're not really missing because it's an ability creature, right? So it's not even going to be using its strength other than to trade with other creatures. But because it has backline and the ability naturally summons minions in front of it, yeah, it'd be really hard to deal with. But we do see an increase in price. It's going to be $20 all the way to $27. It's currently at $25 right now. Falling Star is your 5 mana finisher. Give your opponent's strongest creature burn 6. Summon 3 1/2 badgers with confused. Your creatures gain 1 strength. Yeah, it feels like a finisher. Deals with your opponent's minion by giving it burn. Of course, it'll be able to attack next turn, but I mean, you'll be dealing with 1 less threat on your turn, which is nice. And it's a buff to your board. If you're already winning, you play this card and you win more, which is good. So price went from $8.39 all the way to $14.25. It's currently sitting at that $14.20 price range. Cool. Next up, we have Red Fume Dash. Give a creature Blitz and +2 strength. 2 mana. Genesis set Epic, which is, yeah, it's Genesis set Epics are, I think they're pretty good investments if you can get them for a good price. What do I think about this card? There's so many other cards that that have Blitz and War and that are good, like Tavern Brawler. You have Archangel Bruiser, I think that's what it's called. You have the flanking ship or the ship thing. You have that orc, that 5 mana 3/6 that has Twin Strike and Blitz. There's so many things that have Blitz in War that I'm not too sure if you'd want to run this card, just simply because there are better options. But I could be wrong. Who knows? We do see at the last spot copies were on February 4th, and there have been 3 days now that, haven't been any activity. It's currently at 22.19 though. That's kind of wild. Yeah, that's kind of wild. But it's not a very good card. Or, I mean, it's decent. Yeah. I'm going to say it's decent, but they're just better options. That's it. Cool. And next up, we have Strength in Numbers. This is your 7 mana spell. Add 4 random war creatures to your hand and give 2 to them. Great card to refill for Control War. There isn't that much cycle in Control War other than Out of Its Misery, so this makes sense. I like the card. Giving 2/2 to 4 random creatures is nice. It's basically a 7 mana 8/8 that lets you draw 4. Yeah, it's pretty strong, honestly. We do see an increase in price. It's currently at $10.97 and it's at $10.95 right now, cheapest price you can find. So, good card. Makes sense in Control, even mid-range War. That Which Aches, 6 mana. After you play a card, summon a 3/1 Aching Disciple with Roar, draw a card. Afterlife, shuffle this creature into your deck. 3/7 is a decent set line, kind of, for 6 mana. I like the 7 health. The 3 strength is something to be left, like, desiring. But you're not playing this card for the stats. You're playing this card for the ability to outlast your opponent in fatigue, right? So you play this card, hopefully you play it with 2 more cards, or this card stay alive for you to play more. Once that happens, you can basically never run out of cards from your deck while your opponent can. This card has seen play in Board Wipe Death before. It's a great card in fatigue. I personally like Hypocria's Monster over this card in Board Wipe Death, especially if you're like against other control decks, because I mean the first person to play the Hypocria basically wins in board wipe death, basically. Unless I don't know, there are other options, but yeah, usually the first person to play, especially in the board wipe death versus board wipe death mirror matchup, first person to play the Hypocria usually wins, or the first person to mill the Hypocria wins. So I don't know, but this card is very good. It spiked, it spiked from 231 all the way to 354, back down to 322. That's crazy. Next up, we have Boost Walker. So 4 mana, 4/4, burn 1, give another Atlantean Twin Strike, and 2/2. So since it has burn 1, it's basically a 4/3. 2/2 and Twin Strike is very strong, especially because if you already have an Atlantean on board, they can use it immediately, and it can offer some pretty insane value. That's all I can say, really. This card is a Genesis Epic, so it's also pretty rare in my opinion. But yeah, it spiked at 116, and now it's currently at 102. Glass Cannon had a spike recently. Went from $60 all the way to $98. It's currently at $94 right now. It's 3 mana, 7/2 Blitz. Summon a 3/3 Iron Anim for your opponent. So I gave this card a little bit of thought. I think this card has a very good stat line, and 7 Blitz is really nice, right? My problem with this card is that it summons another monster for you to deal with, right? So imagine this scenario. Your opponent has a really big monster on board. You have Glass Cannon. You summon it. You summon a 3/3, and then you crash the Glass Cannon into your opponent's big threat. But now you're left with a 3/3 on board that you have to deal with, right? So you're not really gaining tempo in the process. You're kind of losing, or even, keeping it neutral. This card would be ideal in situations where you're already ahead on board and your opponent's trying to swing the tempo. So it's like a tempo swing stopper, if you do say so myself. But yeah, it's better when you're ahead, worse when you're behind. Cool. Next up, we have Hooded Doppelganger. This is a 6 mana, 6/5. Choose a creature. This creature becomes a copy of it and gains hidden for 1 turn. That's pretty interesting. Honestly, you can buff a creature, choose a super buff creature, play this card, have it become a copy, and then because it's hidden, it's going to be hard to deal with. Very interesting. There was a buyout here. 27 copies were bought at 1441.54. Sorry, I can't read. I don't know if it justifies the buyout though, because look at this volume. This volume's horrible. Maybe there's something that I'm not seeing here. I mean, we can't really tell the future, and there's so many combos in this game that have yet to be discovered. But I don't know. This could be a thing. It is a Genesis set epic. I'm very biased toward Genesis set epics because they tend to do really well, price-wise. But I digress. All right, moving on. Speaking of Genesis set epics, Nulma has been bought out. 19 copies at $50.73. Whenever this creature takes damage, deal 2 damage to your god. Very good card in aggro or aggressive ramp decks, in my opinion. It's worse in the aggro versus aggro matchup because they can just ram their smaller creatures into you. Can you imagine a zombie death running all their zombies into this card? It hurts just saying that, but this card can be good. It's 5 mana, 7/6, so that's an awesome stat line, honestly. So yeah, I'm conflicted, but I'm also I do see the potential here. Only a matter of time will tell if this card settles in at this $52 price point. So Namebinder Zalzi also experienced a little bit of a buyout. This was 23 copies at $38.55. At the end of each turn your god power is active, change it to a random common one. This card would be better if it was Delve, if you can choose, but since you can't choose, it's kind of unreliable. It's a 1 mana 1/3, which is kind of nice because it trades into Vanguard Axewoman cleanly. Is this worth the buyout though? I'm not too sure. But I mean, there has a potential. I just don't like how it's random. Like, it'd be way better if you can choose. Or at least choose out of some options, right? Next up, we have Sign of Avarice. At the start of your turn, you gain the ability to use your god power twice during the turn. Mana costs still apply. This is an interesting card. 4 mana 3/3 is pretty weak for its mana curve. This card also, its effect starts at your turn, at the start of your turn, which means it has to survive for the next turn before you can get value out of this, which is I don't know if it's worth, but maybe I'm wrong. It could be worth. But yeah, 3/3 just seems like such a bad stat line, and the fact that it procs at the start of your turn means this thing probably won't survive until that. So, but yeah. Anyways, 1360 all the way to 2614. It's currently at 2755. Yeah, who, the market's doing its thing. Who am I to judge? Next up, we have Spiral Golem. This is 6 mana 8/10. That's a big booty. At the start of your turn, this creature attacks a random enemy creature. Okay, so it's kind of like Underbrush Boar, except instead of the end of the turn, it's the start of your turn. I kind of like it. It's a big threat for 6 mana. This is definitely one of the few threats that I think are worth the mana costs. But yeah, we see a jump from 17 all the way to 19. It's currently at 19 now. Philosophical Evangelist. After this creature attacks, gain 2 favor. It's 3 mana 2/4. Very weak stat line. Favor doesn't really do anything. Yeah, in my opinion, for favor cards to be good, they need to be like busted. Like, after this creature attacks, gain like 15 favor. That's better, because that translates into like card advantage, right? But 2 favor isn't really shit. So yeah, but we do see a buyout here. Price increase from 3 to 8. It's currently at 1030 right now, which is very interesting. But it is a promo card, so maybe that's why it's a buyout. Like, it's a collectible, so that can make sense. 5 mana 3/3 Aegis Commander. Frontline. Delve a creature with frontline and put it into your hand. 5 mana 3/3 is a very weak stat line. The fact that it replaces itself is kind of good. I just think it's too slow for the current meta, but to each his own. We do see a price spike, $2.95 all the way to $4. It's currently at $4.89 right now, so almost $5. Very, very interesting. Next up, we have Ley Wraith. This is 6 mana 4/5 Nether. Target 2 creatures, deal 1 damage to enemy creatures. Give friendly creatures +1/+1. Yeah, the effect is very overwhelming for a 6 mana card, especially with that stat line. 6 mana 4/5 is horrible. I'm waiting 7 turns to give +1/+1 to my minions, or 1 damage to my opponent's minions. Yeah, it doesn't make sense, because most of the time your opponent's minions are going to survive, granted if they're playing like a zombie deck or whatever. But yeah, we do see a buyout here, 77 cents all the way to $2.90. It's currently at $2.92. And last but not least, we have Dragonkin Collar. Roar, pull a random dragon from your deck into your hand. 4 mana 3/3 Mystic. Buyouts happened here. 86 copies were bought at an average price of $3.33. God, reading is hard. It's currently at $2.87 right now. Do I like this card? So the 5-head play would be to buy this card in expectation that Gods Unchained will make more dragon cards. And I could kind of see the logic in that. Also, they're doing a dragon rework, so a lot of cards in the core set are, getting like buffed or changed to support the dragon archetype. So it makes sense. I mean, every TCG has a dragon archetype, right? Every TCG except for like Pokemon, but Pokemon has Charizard. Oh yeah, even Pokemon has dragon type Pokemon. Dragonite, Rayquaza. Oh my god. Then Yu-Gi-Oh, Blue Eyes White Dragon. Yeah, yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see more dragon support in the future. I mean, Dragon Concaller is definitely an interesting pick, but I could. It's a good effect that lets you get dragons from your hand. I wish it was cheaper though. It's kind of the same thing as how I feel with the chariot, the magic chariot that does 3/3. Anyways, yeah. Uh, but I do see why the price. I do see why the buyout could be a thing. Okay, that's pretty much it for today, y'all. Thank you again for tuning in. Feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave your thoughts in the comments below. Overall, market's crazy, yeah. So many market changes happened like over the past week, but regardless, I'm still very bullish about the game. The game is fun. Not only that, this is an NFT game that was around before like this whole NFT hype craze. It started in like 2019, 2018. And with Chris Clay being behind everything, or being the lead game developer who worked on like Magic Arena and stuff like that, I think you know, there are a lot of bullish signs with Gods Unchained, and as long as we keep building the community and keep getting players to join the game will be around for a pretty long time if the developers don't fuck it up. Anyways, but